Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watch You Want, and thanks for logging on. Once again, we survived the week that was, and this is the Week in Watches. I'm here with lead watch trader at Watch You Want Gothberg, David Salamanca.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
David's making his debut on our show tonight. We've got an awesome roster of topics to talk up. But first, I want to remind you that my old-style quick hits, the 5 to 7 minute fashion talking hands wrist reviews, are still available more than ever on my Watch You Want Watch Reviews channel. Subscribe on YouTube. Get them delivered directly to you with the best way to view my videos, which is our Gothberg Watchbox app. You can find it on our Gothberg Watches homepage, header tab app. Go there, get it for Android or iOS. News, reviews, and information you can use, especially our real-time pricing AI, which pulls information from the entirety of the internet in terms of sales, transactions, and asks, plus combines our proprietary Watch You Want Gothberg database of sales dating back decades. That's the Gothberg Watchbox app. It's also a news viewer and a video viewer. Now, David, let's start with the wrist shots, because this is unlike any we've had on the show before.
Thank you so much, Tim.
Okay, so just briefly, let me know, David, when did you buy that? We'll come back to the full story a little later in the show, but when did you get this watch?
Of course. So I think it's been about 6 months that I've owned this watch.
And you're a man who bleeds green. This is your second Rolex.
This is my second Rolex. I love everything about the watch. The fact that the green romans stick out every single time I look at the watch is what drives me so crazy about this exact model.
David is passionate about his Rolex, and he's had two great ones. You're going to hear more about that a little further down the line in tonight's show, guys. Unfortunately, I can't offer you any real novelty tonight. This is a watch you've been seeing a lot of lately. I tend to wear my watches in cycles. It's my JLC Master Compressor Extreme World Alarm, the Tides of Time, a 2009 limited series of 350 pieces. It's steel, it's titanium, it's a world time, it's an alarm, it's automatic, it's shock resistant, and it's on this lovely blue Tides of Time bellows style strap. One of my favorite watches and my first JLC. All right, guys. So tonight, having previewed what we're wearing and a feature coming up on David's Rolex, I'm going to ask him to choose between Rolex and a contender. Let's play this or that. Guys, Rolex Yacht-Master II in stainless steel. Since 2012, arguably the only Yacht-Master II to buy. It's 44 millimeters, it's a flyback chronograph, it's stainless steel, and it's $18,750 US. Up against the contender, an all-timer, the Blancpain 50 Fathoms chronograph Flyback. This is the 5085, guys, for those of you who keep score. And it's either 17,800 on a strap or 20,400 on the incomparable X71 bracelet. David, both of these are automatic, 100-meter water-resistant or more. The Blancpain's 45 millimeters, the Rolex is 44. They're both steel. They're both flyback chronographs with a very refined vertical clutch column wheel tandem. They're very similar watches and yet so different. Walk me through the thought process. Which of these would you prefer? Do you go with the Rolex and the programmable countdown, or do you go with the Blancpain with the sapphire bezel and the date?
Whew, that's a tough choice, Tim. I would definitely say I love Rolex, so I would definitely have to own the Rolex no matter what if I had to pick between the Rolex Yacht-Master and the Blancpain. However, if I had the opportunity to own both, I definitely would. The Blancpain, the bezel, the whole design of the watch is something that you don't see every day. When you see a guy walking down the street, when somebody else has their Datejust or their GMTs, you don't see this a lot of times, right? So you'll probably see the Yacht-Master more often, but if I had to own one, I would go with the Yacht-Master II.
Okay, and I can see that. I mean, there are a lot of reasons. First of all, the Caliber's tougher than what's in the Blancpain, so you got that going for you. It's a more rugged watch. Although the Blancpain's more water-resistant, the Rolex Caliber 4161 is a work of art. Free sprung, full balance bridge, very tough. It's got Rolex's own shock absorbers in it, the Paraflex system. It's got greater power reserve, 3 days versus 40 hours in the Blancpain. I think that's a good pick. I think emotionally you could make the argument for the Rolex, but I would also say that intellectually you could make the argument for the Blancpain too, because oh, this is just going to be my preference, and I'm going to rip. I'm going to rip you to shreds. I'm sorry, man.
It's okay.
I just love the sapphire bezel on that Blancpain.
It is gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. It looks like $1 million, and it's not necessarily more expensive. There's no wrong answer here. I think this is the difference between a guy who bleeds Rolex green and a guy who's maybe a little bit more offbeat.
No, I completely agree. And listen, it's still with the Yacht-Master II, you can put a NATO strap. You can put, you can put a rubber strap with the watch. You can still switch it up so you don't have to necessarily have it on the bracelet all the time. So, you know, again, they're just, Rolex is Rolex. I would definitely love to have it, but...
And, you know, I'll just throw... Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can get them both in gold, but we thought we'd do this in steel. There's a rich sapphire bezel on this Blancpain. There's also a blue dial option out there. I mean, maybe that would put you over the top?
Anything's blue, I love it.
Okay. And, of course, there's that superb X71 bracelet, which is lurking in the background for a little bit more money. And there's blue with the bracelet. All right, so guys, new news. We have a new way to buy watches this week. You can buy them, for the first time ever, from IWC in Ceratanium. And if you're going to roll your eyes and say the marketers won that battle, you're absolutely right. So Ceratanium, what is it? It's something that combines the fracture resistance of titanium and the weight of titanium with the scratch resistance of ceramic. As far as I can see, it's basically a hybridization like we've seen with Cermet alloys in the past, wherein you have an aluminum core and a ceramized layer on the outside to effectively give you the scratch resistance but not the frangibility and the potential cracked case of true ceramic. It's fired in a kiln. It's a micron's thin layer on the outside of a metal core, and instant gratification, guys. You can buy a watch in Ceratanium. The IWC Aquatimer Perpetual Calendar 50 Years Aquatimer Edition. I'm going to say that again. IWC Aquatimer Perpetual Calendar 50 Years Aquatimer Edition. It's a big circular name for a big circular watch. A tribute to the first Aquatimer reference 812 AD from 1967. This one's larger than life at 49 millimeters by 19 millimeters thick, actually 19.5. A bit of a hamburger on your wrist. It uses the digital date month perpetual calendar chronograph that we first introduced ourselves to in 2009 on the Da Vinci digital date month. Handsome caliber, 89802. It looks good. It's a flyback. It's automatic, 68-hour power reserve, column wheel, vertical clutch, perpetual calendar. It's impressive. Ultimately, it's still sporting, 100-meter water resistant with IWC's safe dive bezel. The question is, do you like it enough to spring for one of the 50 pieces being issued for US $53,000? David, what do you think of this watch? Is it too much, or at 50 pieces have they gauged the market right?
You know, again, it's really all about supply and demand, right? So whoever loves the watch is definitely going to try to get it. And I think it's going to be more of a thing whether can you find the watch, and if you find the watch, once you have it, do you really love it? Right?
Yeah.
You know, until you try it on and until you really see it on your wrist, you won't be able to really sort of understand and sort of like the watch like you're supposed to. But I would definitely say that, you know, it's a limited edition piece. So as soon as it comes out, we'll be able to tell what kind of market value.
The thing is, David's used to seeing limited edition pieces that show up pre-owned 2 weeks later and a guy wants to get out. I think because of the size of this watch, it's going to be a very special interest piece, but you know, it may have some interest to IWC collectors who want to be the first, not just with this piece, but with this case material. Who knows? Ceratanium might become a thing, and if that's the fact, then maybe down the road we see this as a landmark piece like the first of the IWC ceramic Da Vincis in the 80s. If it proves to be just too big and, you know, doesn't quite satisfy the ceramic guys and doesn't leave the titanium guys feeling fulfilled, then maybe, who knows, dustbin of history. But I think at 50 pieces, IWC probably gauged the market correctly here. There are guys with big wrists who are willing to take the chance at seeing, you know, if a almost 50 millimeter, 20 millimeter thick watch fits on their wrist. At 50, I feel pretty good about the market for this.
100%. I think there's a watch for everybody, right? So there's definitely, you know, a couple of guys that I can think of that would immediately want to wear this watch, right? So it's one of those things where, again, the pricing, You know, at 53,000,
Yeah.
I don't know about 53. I guess we'll wait till, you know, one of the 50 pieces become available.
Yeah, here's the thing.
In the market.
You got a piece that big, it's competing in-house against the IWC Big Pilot's watch that you can buy for under 15,000.
100%.
Like in this size class, you're competing against some larger-than-life watches in the same catalog from IWC. So we'll see what kind of appeal this one has. This one is for you dive watch aficionados who
just need to have it.
Yeah, I guess you've got to have something no one else does. And with 50 pieces, I think there's one for every U.S. state without ever seeing a duplicate.
There you go.
All right, so let's play Timeout real quick. Timeout is where I kind of riff on something that's pop culture and only tangentially and tenuously related to watches in any way. But this news comes out of Switzerland. So ever since Glasuta Originals, a seminal $100,000 homage to baked goods, and I'm a New Yorker, so I appreciate the black and white cookie tribute from our friends in Saxony, I've kept an eye out for crossover content between junk food and high horology, and ruby chocolate was in the headlines this week, courtesy of our friends in Switzerland at Barry Callabaut, a purveyor of industrial grades of chocolate to chocolate manufacturers and shops that buy in bulk. This is allegedly the first new chocolate since white chocolate surfaced via Nestle in Switzerland in the 1930s. Here's the thing, David, it's targeted at millennials, and according to Wikipedia, I'm borderline for Gen X and the millennial generation. I haven't logged into my Facebook account in months, and I've got to admit my favorite candy, Mike and Ike's, is probably, you know, a favorite of the generation that learned about Japanese baseball from chucking back a grenade on Okinawa. So, given that I don't really act my age, tell me, does this appeal to you, berry-flavored chocolate?
Not at all. Not at all. Just give me some gummy bears, you know, give me some of that, you know, I just want some gummy bears, that's it. I don't want the chocolate.
You and I have very similar tastes.
100%.
Mike and Ike is basically a gummy bear shaped like E. coli. So, okay, so there you go. Ruby chocolate, awesome or awful? We're calling awful. I don't think chocolate should be fruity, and neither does David. Is this the future of the brand refreshment? Maybe someday the white gloves, the bottled water, and the chocolate will be ruby chocolate. But not if we have any say in the matter. All right. But I will say, ruby chocolate, guys, I have some positive associations for all of the usual reasons. Okay, back to watches. More new watches. Urwerk's UR-105 CT, the Streamliner. Okay, here's the thing. To honor 20 years of Urwerk, and it's worth mentioning, that takes you back to 1997, way before independent horology was cool. It's the celebration of the brand's founding, 20 years this year, and the specific model we're proposing is a tribute to the seminal reference 103.01. Now this one draws more heavily than the original on epic Manhattan landmarks that inspired Martin Fry and Felix Baumgartner, the twin founding partners of Urwerk. Now they spent some time in New York back in the early days of the brand when it wasn't quite viable and it was touch and go whether or not this project was going to work. All I can say is that if the Streamliner is any evidence, co-founder Martin Fry's drawings remain as compelling today as ever. This thing is stunning and deserves your respect. It's even priced reasonably. Okay, so here's the thing. Fry draws on New York Art Deco architecture. Think the Chrysler Building, think the Empire State Building, streamlined automobiles, iconic 1930s machine-age imagery that celebrated power, dynamism, and speed. All of this is reflected in the design of the new UR-105 CT Streamliner. I also should say that as with the 1930s source material that inspires it, one could also draw some parallels to the early 20th century European futurist movement, which was all about dynamism and strength and power and the machine. So the resulting watch allows you to pop the top, so to speak. This is a UR-105 that transforms from a 103.01 to a 103.03. And if you're not familiar with those two, basically the 103 showed the wandering hours, and then the 103.3 pulled back the top of the watch to expose the mechanism of the wandering hours carousel. So you can actually pull the top of this 105 CT off, and you get both of the 103s in a single 105 reference. You following me? Okay, so even if you're not following me, Consider this pop top like a Cord 812 supercharged for your wrist. 1930s convertible imagery on your wrist with Urwerk technology. And again, 53 by 39.5, it's a big watch like our previous IWC, but unlike the IWC, I think this one is going to wear a lot more compact. It's about the size of a 44mm Panerai, guys, and if you take the hinge lugs into account, wears real compact. David, what's your impression been of Urwerk? You've sold a couple of these. What kind of buyer buys an Urwerk?
I would say somebody that wants something unique on their wrist, somebody that wants to stand out, somebody that does not want to be known for wearing the Rolex, the Panerai, the Patek. They have something on their wrist that's very special to them. So I have, been successful at selling a few of them actually, and every single client is very happy with them, and they love everything about the watch.
Now the thing is, with Urwerk, it's the kind of watch, like David said, that stands out but doesn't speak to the status or wealth of the person unless you know what it is. Like you see a full gold Rolex Yacht-Master II on someone's wrist, okay, he's showing off. And even a person who doesn't know what it is understands it's a huge gold Rolex. When you're wearing an Urwerk, it's almost like a magnet that draws watch nerds. Like
what is that?
Yeah, exactly. Like the kind of guy who looks at an Urwerk and gets intrigued by that is the kind of guy you want to start a conversation with. Not because he's going to ask you if it's a real Rolex or what it's worth, but because he clearly recognizes something cool and he digs it.
Exactly, exactly. And listen, I have a very special client of mine, and he, collects Langs, and he collects artwork, and he collects pieces that, are very, very hard to find. And, it does require that special buyer. And it's that kind of buyer that I thrive for, because he is the one that I can have that conversation with, and he can appreciate sort of the craftsmanship that goes behind every single one of these watches.
And that's interesting, that the kind of person who would buy a Lange would also buy an Urwerk. Like, he's not, you think Lange, you think very traditional. Traditional sizes, traditional metals, traditional designs. And you think Urwerk, crazy space age stuff, or stuff inspired by the 30s diesel punk culture. The bottom line is the kind of person who buys one also buys the other, which kind of teaches us a lesson about watch collectors, which is that once you go outside the mainstream, it could be almost anything from a small German brand that's very traditional to a small Swiss brand that's crazy.
Anything.
The same collection.
What makes them tick is really the question, right? So you have guys that have the 47mm diver Panerais, and they have the artworks, they have the Langs, they have the Pateks, and and those are the guys that you pick their brains and you ask the questions as far as what they want, right? And what really drives them and what kind of watch they want, because again, you never really know until you see their collection.
And so like the guy who starts with maybe the Panerai for his sports watch and the Patek for his dress watch eventually thinks, you know what, for my sporty watch, I want an Urwerk. I want something that's completely off the beaten path. And for his dress watch, he chooses a Lange. So it's kind of like you've seen the growth of these collectors as they moved into Urwerk.
100%. And I also see that eventually through their collection, you have to find pieces for them that, are not very easy to get as well, because again, once you have a very sophisticated piece in your collection, I think you want to keep upgrading. Right, so it's like with artwork, I think that they have a great selection, and I'm very inspired by the brand.
I feel the same way. And I'll say that Felix Baumgartner is a great guy. I met him at Time Crafters in 2016, and he was just as excited about a group of New York tourists coming around to see his Wandering Hours system in the year 2016 as he was practically 20 years prior. His eyes lit up. He's like 6'6". He jumped up from his chair. He practically ran towards the people to ask him, what time is this? And he showed him his watch. He wanted them to guess what time it was from reading the Wandering Hours. I have a question from Valablitz asking, Wandering Hours, what is it? Okay. It's basically just that you've got a satellite system of hours, generally 3 satellites, each with 4 hours painted on it. So you've got 12 hours total. And then you've got a span that's kind of like an arc from 0 to 60 minutes. One of those satellite wheels rotates. An hour aligns with that scale, like 8. And once 8 aligns with 0 at the beginning of the scale, it's 8 o'clock. Then that satellite moves across the scale, and another one rotates into position 9, aligns with the 0, and rotates across the scale. No matter how crazy the Urwerk watches look, that's their fundamental system. Wandering hours. You can also see it on Audemars Piguet's Star Wheels from 1991 to the present. All right, so I also want to say that there are 50 versions of this watch, each one $69,000, which is pretty reasonable considering 400, maybe, Urwerk watches per year, handmade by a small team in Switzerland. A micro manufacturer asking reasonable prices. You can get it in titanium and blackened steel or titanium and polished steel. And this is one thing I really like about what Urwerk's doing here. By associating a story with the conception of the watch, how Fry and Baumgartner were taken by Art Deco architecture in Manhattan in their early days, they've taken a page from Max Busser and mb&f. And Max has a marketing monopoly on imagination and mind share. There are many brands that are at his level or beyond in terms of actual product. And I know with independent horology being kind of a society of friends, like one rising tide lifts all boats, there's never been, I would say, more of a little bit of a divide between one brand and all the rest in terms of perception than there is between mb&f and everyone else. Max markets second to none, and I know that there is some resentment of how successful he's been as a marketer among other independent brands and one-man bands. I think with this storyline behind the new Streamliner, Urwerk is channeling some of what Max does best. His stuff has been brilliant, but by creating a story that draws people emotionally, Fry and Baumgartner tap into diesel punk pop culture here with the 105 CT, and at least from where I stand, a little bit of a nod to movies that more folks should have loved with the design of the Streamliner here. That's my take. I think Urwerk has finally created a marketing story that's up to the level of their watch, and thank goodness for that. So David, let's talk about a value proposition. Now, what is the lowest value of a watch you would buy as a watch trader? Because I know some people will call us and they'll say, you know, I paid $1,000 for this Guess watch. Why won't you buy it?
Gotcha.
Like, what's the low end of what we buy? Because we're going to talk about real value right here.
You know, you have a lot of brands like, you know, Longines might be, it's like right there in the middle where it's all dependent on the retail price, right? And, you know, how many of them are available. And you know, if I had to really think about a specific brand, I would have to, you know, sort of look at them closely. But
is there a value level? Like often we've said we have to be able to resell it for a certain amount. What do you think that threshold is?
I think if the watch retails from anywhere between $2,500 or so, it's going to be hard for me to be able to take that watch in, maximize your return, and still be able to make a profit for the company and you know, to cover everything else. So watches like that, I always give the advice and I always say, listen, it's best for you to just sell this on your own and maximize your return, and I'd rather help you sell the watch on your own than me trying to buy and make a ridiculous offer for a watch like that.
So basically, where David is leading us with this discussion, even though he doesn't know it, is a discussion of real value. Now, David's explained that there are some watches that you will buy for $1,000 that are going to sell on eBay for a few hundred, maybe a quarter of what they sold for originally, to the point where he will actually say, you're better off just selling this privately. And that's where I really want to examine the whole notion of the value proposition. I hear this term thrown around a lot, value proposition, and it's usually associated with a watch that is, by the standards of the luxury market, very inexpensively priced. It's typically at or around $1,000. Sometimes it can be as high as $2,000 or, like David said, $2,500. But there are watches that come from fashion brands. There are watches that come from the now ubiquitous and daily multiplying micro brands. I'm not talking Urwerk and mb&f here with their 400 pieces a year now. I'm talking about companies that have,
Louis Vuitton, maybe?
I mean, not even Louis Vuitton is now, they're now like respectable. I'm talking about companies that come out of nowhere, buy a product off the shelf at a watch fair in the Far East, put their name on it, sell it for something that looks respectable, like $1,000, not so cheap that you'd suspect it's really just a heist of your money, but not so expensive that you have second thoughts and start cross-shopping real luxury watches. So I'm going to suggest that value, as it relates to luxury watches, has to do with what you're getting and what you can expect to get back when you sell the watch. So what you're getting could be a function of the content and how much blood, sweat, and tears goes into it. We know longer resale is very weak, but what you're getting is a tremendous amount of hand finishing, love, care, blood, sweat, and tears. Or there could be something like the Rolex Batman, the black and blue GMT. What's the resale on that, David? Like, how strong is that compared to what's out there?
I mean, you know, it's
pretty good.
It's pretty good. I mean, it's $450 below retail value, in my opinion. You know, it's one of those watches where if I could have it back, you know, today, I definitely would. I mean, the watch is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, so you're saying that's the kind of watch that you would buy at $450 below retail?
I wouldn't even think about it twice. You know, when I initially purchased that watch, I had to pay over retail. So that was early 2013, I believe, when the watch was first introduced, and you know, until what it took me at least 6 months to be able to get the watch, and then once I received it, it was, you know, I never wanted to give it up, but being in the industry, I think it's always good to switch it up a little.
Yeah, so what David's getting at is that he did eventually sell the watch and he owned the watch. And where we're going with this is that if you're not getting a ton of artisanal content to justify a watch as being a good value, like I said, longer resale, very weak. But what you're getting, so good. I think the brand will be managed back to health and resale will firm up on longas. But even if you sold it at a loss, you would know you got one of the best manufactured watches in the world. The Rolex is the opposite end of the spectrum. It's not that you're not getting something beautiful, you're getting a mostly machine-made watch, but value is in the retention of the money you spend on the watch.
100%.
So you're getting something that's a store of value with the Rolex, you're getting something that has artisanal value invested in it in the Longa. Micro brands, cheap watches, the so-called value proposition, that term you hear thrown around, you're buying something that's essentially a perishable good. You're going to lose everything you put into that in most cases. Are there exceptions? Sure. 7 Fridays tend to do well. I'm sure the new Ming models are going to do well. They've been talked up. We'll see if there's enduring value. But my point is that I would rather talk about value as either value retained compared to what you paid, or objective value invested in making the watch. When you hear the term value proposition paired with a low price, I think that's an artificial distinction, and I think oftentimes it's a bit of a sham. And I don't think anyone responsible in the community writing, talking, or riffing on watches should associate value just with a low price. So that's how I feel about that. Okay, so there was a question in the chat box about the difference between jump hours and wandering hours. Jump hours should change instantly on the turn of the hour. Wandering hours, the point is almost that the hour lingers across a visible scale for a full hour before it exits stage, well, I'm going to say stage right from your perspective when you're wearing it. There's a big difference. It's the speed of the turnover of the hours. A wandering hour system operates on a carousel with satellites. A jump hour usually is an aperture that jumps very quickly and instantaneously on the turn of the hour, on the hour. Okay, so what I'm also going to say is we talked about the Rolex GMT BLNR being a great example of retained value. There's a watch that came up this week that bothered me a lot. It's the Maurice Lacroix Acon Bronze, and it's $1,450 US, so not cheap. I mean, that's a chunk of change there. It's a 44mm quartz watch that I feel is a bit of a pastiche of plagiarized design cues, and I'm not sure from whom. I see some Vacheron, Audemars, Patek,
Aquanaut.
Yeah, some Aquanaut and Nautilus at the same time. Maybe a little bit of Tudor Black Bay Bronze or Oris Carl Brashear, but this is not a successful design. And I normally love Maurice Lacroix, especially their Masterpiece series, which gives you a lot for your money. They're a vertically integrated manufacturer that should strut its stuff better than it does in advertising, but with this 388-piece edition, I feel like they're firing a blank. And I wouldn't associate the word value with a nearly $1,500 quartz watch with an insipid design and really no lasting aesthetic or artistic value, nothing invested in it from an artisanal standpoint. I mean, David, what do you think that watch sells for on the secondary market if it's quartz, kind of plagiarized and starts
I
at
mean,
$1,500.
with a $1,500 retail value, I think you're better off waiting for the watch to sell pre-owned because it's going to sell at 50% of that. You're going to see it for 50% of that.
So you're talking hundreds of dollars.
Immediately. It's a watch that I would prefer, again, to not buy. I don't want to make an offer on that watch because when you do spend that $1,500 plus sales tax, like at that point, my offer is just, you can get more for it selling it yourself.
So yeah, I want to quickly throw a question to you from the field.
Sure.
By the way, I want to call out some of our friends in the chat box who are watching us. Nicolas Lintz, Bubblegum, Ben Susi, Clive, Watch Yoda, CQ Gottlieb, CQ the Watch Guy, longtime friend of the house in there.
Right.
Thin Lizzy, I want to give shout out to all of our folks joining us from all around. Konstantinos, welcome. Want to give a shout out to Dean, welcome. And what you got there? Joseph Knightley.
We also have to give a shout out to Mr. Thanos.
Josh Thanos joining us from Washington.
Thanos. Yep, he was not able to be here tonight, but I know he's watching, and he says hello to all of you guys watching. So
we have an interesting question from Dean coming in. Dean Handley is asking, are the early Urwerk 101 and 102s collectible? The 101 is often called the Millennium Falcon, and the 102 is often called the Sputnik. Why? Because they look like their respective namesakes. I would say yes, they're collectible, but I'm not sure they're investments yet. What I will say is that the prices have bottomed and that I've seen them for sale for around $30,000 at the low end. So if you can get on board now, yeah, I do think those are going to be gainers in the future as people start asking what's scarce, what's significant, what are the landmark watches of our time from the landmark independents. I think the next vintage is going to be latter-day independent watches made from the 90s through the mid-2000s. I think you're going to see a lot of early Roger Dubuis. FP Journe is already taking off. That's a thing already. Early mb&f, Urwerk. I think early Kerry Voutilainen is going to pick up, and Voutilainen is going to start looking more like Philippe Dufour on the secondary markets. Vianney Halter. I think this is going to be the next vintage, i.e. the area of collecting where suddenly old references or references out of production start gaining a lot of value very quickly. And I think it's going to be a combination of online journalistic recognition, collector enthusiasm that's organic, and an honest search for scarcity in an age of overproduction. But yeah, also auction houses are going to get in on it, and then it's going to go crazy. So David, we have a question from the field about the Royal Oak Ultra Thin 15202. Would you take it in gold or steel? That's a question that just came in from our live chat. This is from Adrian Chan. Oh.
Listen, I think I would take the 15202 whichever way I can get it, right? Steel, gold, it really depends on who you are. You see, I wear steel and gold. It depends on if you want to wear an all gold watch, right? And you know,
that's a big consideration.
That's really what it all comes down to, right? So you have steel or you have gold. Which one do you feel comfortable wearing? From there, I think that should answer your question, right? For me, I think I would go with the steel.
Yeah, I would too.
Simply because it's to me, I want to know that in the event that I like the watch for 6 months to a year, 2 years, I know that I can trade that watch much easier than if I took the gold one, because again, it requires a special buyer.
That's true. You buy a gold Royal Oak, you might lose. You're probably going to lose. If you buy it at retail, you're probably going to lose some value. If you buy a 15202 ST in steel at retail, is it unreasonable at this point with Audemars Piguet prices firming up to say you could buy a 15202 in steel, wear it gently for a year, and trade it for close to what you paid, if not exactly?
It's AP right now is one of our hottest and strongest brands. 15202s, 15400s, 15300s, anything that has a diverse chronos, those watches right now I think are definitely on the up and up, and especially the 15202. I mean, whether you can get it in steel or gold, you're doing a great job with that.
I would say if you're gonna go gold with a 15202, there's only one way to go, and that's the Hourglass limited edition of 50 from about 2 years ago. Green tapisserie dial in a yellow gold case. That's a super watch. That is the most desirable precious metal 15202 in my opinion. Rare, special, custom caseback rotor with the hourglass engraved into the gold winding mass. Super hot watch. I wouldn't wear a full gold bracelet watch like that because frankly it's overkill, but if you're going to go that way, that's the way to go. Okay, so here's one last thought. Here's a great value proposition from the real world. A Longines Heritage Aviation BigEye. This is a vintage tribute watch from Longines, which does the genre better than almost anyone. And I would say that they helped to invent the concept of the tribute watch these days. So in as much as you can really only be a pioneer if you were the first or close to it, I think they've earned the right to issue tribute watches without the criticism of Me Too-manship that affects almost everyone else, including Tudor. I'm going to throw that out there, doing tribute watches. So this is a watch that retails for $2,625 US. Longines impresses here with 41 millimeters, a sapphire case, or a sapphire crystal. Well, yeah, a sapphire case, that would be impressive, but a sapphire crystal, stainless steel case, automatic column wheel chronograph with a 54-hour power reserve, and being part of the Swatch Group, it's a real ETA, not a Salida, not a knockoff, not a drop-in replacement. This is like me at the prom. No date. They were bold to reissue this watch without a date. I've seen too many vintage tribute watches that popped a date in the middle to satisfy the lumpen and to pander to the market. Excuse my little bit of elitism there, but I think if you're going to do a vintage tribute, do it with the purity of the original, and the dial is unspoiled by a date aperture here. And you know what? In this case, I don't miss it. Exaggerated 30 minutes counter, vintage style, hence the name BigEye. This is a watch, David, that I think you could buy, enjoy. If you lost $600 on it selling it privately, that would be the cost of ownership for a year or two of having fun with a good watch that's a luxury product, lifetime serviceable, and has aftermarket value. Completely
Agree. I mean, it's one of those watches where at a certain point when you buy a watch like that, you have to understand that you can't always think about reselling the watch and what I'm going to get for the watch when I resell it. Enjoy it, wear it, use it. If you don't need to resell it, you don't need to resell it. Just keep it in the collection because it is a very, to me, it's a lot of watch for the money.
Yeah, automatic sapphire crystal steel case, long power reserve, column wheel movement, very clean looks. And we know that the Longines Legend Diver is a strong, it's priced in the same price range, and that's a strong play on the secondary market. That's a pre-owned watch that we love to buy all day long.
All day long.
So yeah, I think this is an example of a value proposition. This is a textbook case of it. So finally, David, let's play this or that bonus round. Now, David has alluded to the fact that he owned a Rolex GMT-Master II BLNR, the black and blue, the Batman. And David, you traded it for the watch you're wearing tonight. So this or that, Rolex Batman or Datejust II, 116333 two-tone. David, why did you make this change? Give us a wrist shot one more time, too, because this watch stuns. What was your thought process? When did you start thinking you wanted to trade the Batman?
Well, you know, before I traded the Batman, I think I had it for a little over 3 years. And I think what really made me want to trade the watch is what makes everybody want to trade a watch, right? Is the fact that you're looking at the watch and that same novelty and that same love that you had for the watch when you first had it a year and a half in sort of fades away after a while. And, you know, unless you have the ability to have 15 watches in your collection, to me, being in the business, I would rather have 1, 2, 3 special ones that I like and just trade constantly, you know. So with that being said, I traded the Batman for the Datejust II to add a little bit more spice, I would say. I love the green Romans. I believe as soon as you walk in the room, that's the first thing that you're looking at, that gold bezel. It pops, it illuminates immediately with any kind of light hitting it. The green Romans, I mean, it's just being in the business of trading, buying and selling watches. I mean, you're looking at the green Romans, it makes you want to buy and sell more watches. So that's sort of what made me tick and get that watch.
So in other words, you feel like the time to change a watch is when the passion is gone, or when you find you have more passion for something that's, you know, the bird in the bush, the unconquered peak. If there's something else on the market that you love more than what you've got, it's time to make a change.
15400 blue dial. That's the watch that I would get next.
That's what would replace the two-tone DJ2.
Correct. That would replace it, simply because it just, you know, the bracelet, the color of the dial, it's hard enough to find a white dial or black dial. Just being able to find the blue dial, you know, like I said, anything with blue drives me crazy. So, you know, hence I had the Batman. Now I have the green, you know, Roman. So I would definitely have to say it's the 15400 blue.
Okay, so that's interesting. So that's following the thought process of a collector going from, you know, his first major luxury watch, which was the Batman, to, I think, an evolution of tastes. David is of Miami, as we all were at Watch You Want, and his tastes are very much Miami Beach. A little bit of two-tone Rolex found his favor. And now he's thinking, you know, as he's seen many watches and seen the scope of what's out there, he's thinking 15400 with the blue dial that's usually a boutique special.
Correct. So being able to find that watch pre-owned, I mean, I don't think it lasts anything more than a week and a half on the website. So I have not been able to get my hand on one of those, but I'm sure I will.
Yeah, so he's got the watch that he's watching our intake department for, and I've got mine, JLC repeater, repeater reverso from the early 90s. I had a question from Noah. Tim, what's your favorite vintage JLC reference prior to the 80s? That would be the E877 Snowdrop with the black dial. That is one of two watches left on my roadmap with that reverso repeater that I consider to be essential to the core of the collection, at which point I have that and the reverso, I would say, you know what, I need to take a step back, take a breather, and decide whether I want to continue mono-brand collection or branch out. I think the other thing that's interesting is we had a question right here at the last minute about Cartier resale value from Juan. Real quick, David, Cartier resale value, is it model dependent, or is there a general rule right now? Strong, weak?
I think every single watch is different. So when somebody asks me, what do you think about the brand itself? You know, I personally like divers more than, you know, if you tell me choose between a Cartier Pasha or, you know, your diver models, then I'm definitely choosing the diver models. I think it's more about, you know, popularity and demand. I think I have more of, you know, a demand for those kind of models than, you know, and again, everybody's different, but I would say it really depends on the specific watch that we're talking about.
So best value for Cartier, if you want to turn around and sell it on the secondary market in general, unless it's a ladies' watch, you're probably talking steel. You're probably talking something like the Calibre de Cartier Diver. That's a strong watch.
Yep.
The Roadster. People
Santos.
still ask about that. The Santos?
The Santos, the Roadster, and the diver pieces, I think, are the strongest for Cartier, for sure.
Now, you heard it from the man himself, buying, selling, and trading watches for the last 3 years. David's probably bought, sold, and traded, I don't know, I would say $20 to $30 million worth of watches in his time. So this is a man who's been around the block, and even then, his tastes continue to evolve, showing that it's a fact, no matter how many watches pass across your desk or your wrist, there is always another watch. So guys, thank you for joining us. Of course, we want to wish the best and safety. And please, to all our friends back in Miami, everyone who's still back there down in South Florida, listen to the authorities, evacuate, take care, be safe, think ahead, and know that all of our thoughts and our wishes are with you. We hope for the best for you and everyone in our old home. You know, you can take the folks out of Miami, you can't always take the Miami out of the folks, and I think David and I are of one mind there.
100% agree, and thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it.
I'm Tim, he's David, they're the three amigos, this is Watch You Want, and thanks for logging on, guys. Have a great weekend.
Take care, guys.